All right, yo, can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yeah, I can
Got
hear
it.
you.
This should be good. Let me share screen real quick. Cool. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right. I did my presentation on Olympus DAO. So I actually have a meeting too in like 7 minutes, but I'll go over a little bit on this to go over. So what is Olympus? Olympus essentially is like an algorithmic currency protocol regulating the free floating Ohm token. And the goal of Olympus here is to kind of build this economically secure currency capable of facilitating real world economic activity on par with traditional fiat currencies. So it's kind of like we see it at Olympus, and like a lot of the community members see it as like this modern return to the gold standard. Oh, and quick disclosure, DeFi Alliance is an advisor to the Olympus protocol. I personally do hold own tokens, so just want to put that out there. So some features of Olympus, right? So it has reserves which underpin Ohm by providing deep liquidity and an intrinsic value. And then there's a policy team which regulates the accumulation and allocation of reserves as governed by the Olympus DAO. And anyone can apply to be on the policy team. Um, so so the economics of Ohm are actually quite similar to Bitcoin and other traditional store of value crypto assets, but it differentiates itself by offering native yields, which offset the appreciation, not the supply. And so you kind of secure the network through this value accruing bonding instead of kind of value draining mining that's seen with Bitcoin. And kind of with its ability to influence its own market through treasury reserves when they get big enough, interesting dynamics can kind of come to play. So kind of Olympus being a player in its own market means that at a critical mass of capitalization in the treasury reserves, it can impose stability and enable real world economic use cases with price consistency and low volatility. So you can kind of think of it as like the Federal Reserve or the central bank at that point. And so why is Olympus important? Dollar peg stablecoins have been, they've obviously become an essential part of crypto due to their lack of volatility as compared to tokens such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. We've all seen the exponential growth charts. And so users are comfortable with transacting using stablecoins, knowing that they hold the same amount of purchasing power. Obviously, that's a fallacy because the dollar is, kind of controlled by the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve, which means that the depreciation of the dollar also means depreciation of these stablecoins. Olympus DAO aims to solve this by creating a non-peg stablecoin called Ohm, and kind of focusing on supply growth rather than price appreciation, and then eventually finding stability. Um, so how does Olympus work? The Olympus Treasury is the monetary authority of the Ohm market, right? So the Treasury is limited in its ability to mint Ohm by its backing constraint. So you must have one USD for every Ohm that it mints. So this means that Ohm cannot be printed at will. There must be assets behind each token. This is different than pegging to a dollar, and so like backing allows this. Like that's why you see this huge premium on the Ohm token trading at like above 300, right? Because it's backed by, not pegged by. Um, and so the life cycle of Olympus begins with bonds. So bonds are the mechanism through which the treasury brings in new assets. There are two main asset types. There are reserve assets, so DAI, FRAX, and these various other, kind of stable coins, and then non-reserve assets. So you got ETH, like eventually you can add Bitcoin. And then these two asset types also have liquidity counterparts. They have the reserve liquidity in the Ohm DAI, Ohm FRAX, and then non-reserve liquidity in Ohm ETH. It differs in that the treasury can mint against reserve assets, but it can only hold and not mint against non-reserve assets, which is kind of intuitive because the reserve assets are kind of stable coins. So the bonds serve two purposes. They bring in new reserves and they enable profit distribution. For every ohm bought or sold through bonds, there's a profit margin. So the treasury is either selling an ohm for more than a dollar or it's buying ohm for less than a dollar. And then the spread there is considered profit, and profits are distributed to stakers in the form of new ohm. The system's kind of always in a state of profit or stagnation, and it's impossible for the treasury to lose money in kind of these operations. And this advantage is enabled by its senior's rights. And so there's this kind of game theory optimal strategy that a lot of users and people who interact with the Olympus DAO ecosystem kind of go through, and that's kind of like the 3-3 meme or the comma thing. It all started with Olympus. So users can go on the Olympus DAO app and stake their own to get SOM. The current APY is 8,000%, which can be sustained for over 350 days and growing. And again, the sustained extended runway continues to get larger and larger as more and more people bond because that adds more and more runway. And so before the APY used to be like over 150,000. And as I mentioned, that policy team that's running the DAO, they obviously want to have the protocol be sustained and healthy as possible. So, through votes and whatnot, the community has decided to drop the APY to 60,000, then to 20,000, now 8,000. And eventually the goal is to drop it all the way down to like double digits. That way that the runway would, be multiple years. So the 5-day rate of return is about 6%. So if you buy and stake Ohm in 5 days, you would get 6% of your stack, kind of back in Ohm. And then users can also go on the OlympusDAO app and bond various assets to get Ohm. So bonding is the mechanism, that I just previously highlighted. There are various options to bond, right? There's the ETH bonds, DAI bonds, the LP bonds, and the bonds vest block by block on a 5-day schedule. Hence why I mentioned the 5-day ROI earlier. And so if it makes sense, it only makes sense to bond when the bonding discount is greater than or equal to the 5-day ROI. So for example, if the discount for a bond is 8%, and the ROI is 6%, and Ohm stays at $300 for those 5 days, bonding at 8% is more profitable than staking at 6% for those 5 days. And so now imagine if Ohm goes up in price, we're seeing like whales play these games where they'll bond and then we'll have a bunch of dry DAI or dry stable coins sitting on the side. So they'll bond at like $300. They'll get the 8% discount over the 6% ROI, but then they'll also buy a bunch of more Ohm at the market to bump the price up, and then more people will buy. So then now Ohm's trading at 330. So then their discount is, obviously way more realized. And then there's also like a little arbitrage that you can run where you can claim and stake as you vest. And then the ARB discount is even more. So like the last time I ran these calculations, they could be a little bit wrong now, but if you vest your bond just once a day, so Ohm rebases every 8 hours. So every, 3 times a day, you get your 0.5%, kind of little bonus or whatever. If you claim a bond, whatever is claimable each day for 5 days, like, so basically 20% of the vested bond, and then stake that. So that's kind of the 1133 strategy you see in the title. And then you stake that. So now all of a sudden you're getting these discounted Ohm, but then you're also quickly dumping it in right before a rebase to get the 0.5% boost. And then if you do this just every day for 5 days, you end up getting a discount of like 14-15% as opposed to the 8%. So that's like kind of a quick rundown of Ohm. Some stats. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the Ohm, like the beauty of Ohm is this increasingly growing treasury, and the idea is for the treasury to become big enough to then become an actor in the market. And so the risk-free value of Ohm, just in 6 months is about $42 million, with DAI and Frax in the treasury, and then that's obviously the risk-free because of stable coins, and then the market value when you include ETH, sushi, because they own the sushi pool, so they get a bunch of sushi for trading fees and onsen, it ends up being about $127 million. The risk-free value one is the one that most people keep an eye on though. And then some other growth metrics, total LP fees, have earned over $2.3 million because they own both protocol and liquidity for 99% for Frax and 99% for sushi, or the Ohm DAI on sushi, both of them on, yeah. And so $70 million of the own liquidity for Ohm DAI, $16 million of the own liquidity for Ohm Frax. And these are some other metrics. The holders over time has just steadily been growing. The current reward rate runways available for about 350 days. And you can kind of see like when they dropped the APY, right? Like this was, kind of just recently they dropped the APY to 8,000%. And so now it's flatlined, and that's what we're seeing here. So some stats, this is comparing, like these are the stats for the month of June and just kind of comparing them to the month of July in the next slides. So, this is like a monthly revenue. You can kind of see Olympus compared to all the other protocols. And like the revenue is kind of calculated by the amount of capital that's taken in by the protocol measured at, the market value at the time of the acquisition. So in the case of like, Uniswap, SushiSwap, Bancor, revenue comes from trading fees, and for Aave and Compound, it comes from interest. For Olympus, like the revenue comes primarily from bonds, and a little bit from trading fees for owning the pools. But so you can kind of see where it compares next to these protocols, and you can kind of annualize it and see that Olympus is, at least for the month of June, the annualized revenue was almost one of the highest in the industry. And this goes back to the users too. That's the thing. And so if you kind of market cap to annualized revenue, you can kind of see how undervalued, quote unquote, Olympus would be placed at. And so that was obviously a great month of June, right? And if you compare that to July, it only got better. The protocol revenue for July was like 35 million. And so annualized, it was, almost $500 million, and the annualized protocol revenue, obviously the same thing. And so these are the same numbers kind of, you're just showing the trajectory, the growth trajectory. And so I think that one of the more important metrics that a lot of people kind of, like we've all famously heard the saying, invest in cults and whatnot. I think that the Olympus DAO community is also one of its key like fundamentals for, when looking into Olympus. Over the past 4 or 5 months, OlympusDAO has seen an incredible amount of growth and some key stats from the Discord. So they have over 15K members, and then a separate DAO server with over 1,500 members that are, extremely active and contributing. A lot of activity in the servers if you guys have ever been. And the people are, extremely active, always willing to help one another. And kind of as far as I can tell, they've spent zero marketing budget spent on, influencers and whatnot. So, it's just kind of consistent up into the right growth for members. Holders and community growth both go hand in hand. And if you kind of benchmark this against other DeFi protocols, so Olympus has, over 15K members and then over 1,500 in the DAO that, kind of all work. Whereas like Alchemix, considered to have a strong community, have like, probably close to 10,000 now. Fate protocol has like about 12K. Balance, these, Synthetics has like 30,000. Compound has about 12,000. So just kind of benchmarks it against some of the top DeFi protocols. And so user engagement, this is a cool thing that, we've kind of, I've worked with, with Zeus and a few others to figure out. The community internally figured out some initiatives to, onboard new members and teach people about Olympus, because it's oftentimes discredited as a scam, blah, blah, blah. And so you can kind of see like right here, there was this Sherpa and Grasshopper initiative done, which, we help all of us community members help do in the server. And as new members would come in, the Sherpas would kind of, teach them a lot of the new, a lot of how Olympus works. And then you can kind of see, the activity going up in that direction because of that. And so some of the DAO accomplishments, we've seen the DAO super active, organize events, like execute partnerships, ideate on bonds, did the Rory Infused partnership, Olympus pool party event with, a lot of the other protocols in the same exact kind of niche. And then, many more that, have been coming. So it's amazing to see how active the protocols community and whatnot is. So yeah, that's a quick, background on DeFi Alliance. Olympus and, kind of from DeFi Alliance's angle. Happy to answer any questions.